talk about Salesforce because they announced in a statement recently that in the period ending in October, sales will be 2.11 billion up to 2.12 billion. And although it's first time that the San Francisco-based company generated $2 billion in revenue in a single quarter, it's still not enough to keep up with Salesforce's acquisition spree, unveiling that they spent roughly $4 billion on acquisitions this year alone, which included Demandware for $2.8 billion in cash. So Scott, lots of questions kind of for you on this one. Is the shopping spree due to the growing competition, both Oracle and Microsoft? I mean, this is a whole bit, we could go on and on about because we always talk about Salesforce consistently, almost every single month, but because they're always buying something, right? I mean, just give me kind of your thoughts on these guys.
They're always in the news, and I think that, the CEO had given advice on this at one point. He basically said that he entered the year not necessarily knowing that it was, or planning for that to be an acquisition spree, but essentially it was a really good climate for it. Just things really heated up on them, and they're going to be in there every single time, right? So I think they were in a couple of deals they didn't necessarily win, but Demandware was one where they struck really big. And I think so far, that's proven to do really well for them. Anecdotally, I talked to an awful lot of organizations that are now really looking at Demandware pretty hard, harder than they ever were before. And I talked to a lot of the really big agencies that do e-commerce implementations, and they're seeing an awful lot of uptake on the Demandware side. So I think, again, just anecdotally, that's looking good for them. And again, to have a $2 billion quarter, their first one ever, I think they've raised their price on the year, their forecast on the price for the year. So I think things are looking pretty good for them.
Now, one other thing that I have to know, we talked about is there kind of pressure, pressure from external. Talk about the pressure from Wall Street to grow revenues in 2017. That has to be a part of it, doesn't it?
I think it's so funny. Well, there's pressures on them from all over the place.
When you're that big,
pressure to make a profit would be nice. So there's lots of pressures, but one of them, it's really funny to see headlines about this particular story that they lowered their advice to the market that they were only going to be 2.12 instead of 2.13. So they're off by $10 million, and all of a sudden the market talk is, they're not going to hit expectations. Meanwhile, they just beat expectations and they're raising them on the year. So it's a funny thing to go public. I mean, I think advice for those who are not yet public that are thinking about IPOs, like reconsider. But yeah, so there is pressure to constantly grow that top line and that bottom line, both for them. But I think there's also just, again, this heated up and the pricing battles heated up in terms of what they were paying for. They paid a pretty penny for Demandware, and I think a lot of that was because we talked about this at the time. There was competition, whether it be from Adobe, maybe even from a Microsoft, about the competition for those things. We saw Microsoft in the heated battle pay an awful lot of money for LinkedIn. Salesforce was in that. So there's a lot of so yes, pressure from Wall Street to get their numbers looking pretty good, but also when the deals are there for the taking, you got to be in them, and there's an awful lot of others who are in them too. It's a Shark Tank in there, so to speak.
Yeah. So with that, one last question on this. What's next? I mean, are they kind of done, or do they think they're going to keep this?
It's an interesting question, and I'm done predicting what Salesforce is going to do because, when I think they're going to go buy finally a content management platform, although I do know that they're looking at them, I keep saying that, yet it never kind of comes to fruition, or they'll go buy something they've already had 2 or 3 times over, like they've done in the marketing automation world a few times. So I do think, however, that the idea that CRM has become kind of the nexus of, we talk about personalization, we talk about all that. They now have the constructs of a whole lot of information all about your customers. And so ways they can put that in, I think you're going to see an awful lot of VR and AR and some of those new ways of kind of experiences that you're trying to generate, fueled by information about the particular person and what they like to see. Think Pokemon and all of that. Think of those sorts of experiences now in buying and shopping experiences, in even just think about that, and not in shopping experiences, but in employee circumstances where it might be easier to be able to kind of be somewhere else. I think there's an awful lot of ways they can work.